Hello and welcome back to my channel. I am Mercedes and this is the Frugal Life with Mercedes. So it is being talked about in the news. I know there's a lot of things going on, but something that I saw the other day is that President Trump might declare a housing crisis. And essentially that is because, as we all know, the interest rates for houses, the affordability of them, and the numbers of them don't correlate with people being able to buy them. Now, you guys know I really strive not to be political on this channel, but he is our president, and this is something that he seems to be seriously considering doing. So that is why I'm talking about it, and it has to do with money. But we do not need any politician to tell us what we see. I understand that declaring it an emergency can potentially help the issue, but we all know that we are in a housing crisis, and we have been for many, many years. I can only speak specifically about where I live. The houses are really expensive, and as people have pointed out to me, like I don't know, Virginia is an expensive state. And I know everybody thinks they live in an expensive state, but Virginia is like one of the highest property tax states in the country. You guys can look that up. And where I live about an hour and a half, 2 hours from the richest county in the country. So even though I live more in the country, like rural, it still affects our ability to buy a house. I know the neighborhood that my parents live in, my mom will send me like Zillows of like the neighbor's house being sold, and they're decent sized houses, but like she sent me one and it was like they're across the street neighbor, a few houses down, and literally the house looked junky. Like there was like 3 or 4 different granites countertops in the kitchen. There was like, it's like they had remodeled it themselves from like the discount bin, which I'm not discouraging you guys to do that, but the way they did it was just like really thrown together. And what that house sold for was just absurd. Now I get it's like you can get a house and you can totally redo it, but if you're overpaying for a house, like I don't see the justification to then have to completely gut it. Like it doesn't really make any logical sense. So in my opinion, we are in a housing crisis, and we have been for a very long time. And I've shared a little bit, but like years ago, I actually got approved for a home loan, and it was through HUD. I can't remember exactly what that stands for, but it's like Housing, Urban Development, something like that. And essentially it is for lower income individuals who are first-time home buyers. And there's a lot of perks. You don't have to have as high of a credit score. And it's specifically geared towards people that might not be able to own a home due to financial limitations. And I was approved for the loan because I was so low income. But what they don't tell you, which if you guys have never like been involved in the program, I did have to take like some online classes, and basically it was like all common sense stuff, like you have to pay your mortgage and like, you know, things like that we all know. But it's a government program, so, you know, they're just assuming that we don't know. So take that for what you guys will. But one of the stipulations is the house cannot be a fixer-upper. It has to meet certain standards. And I totally understand why, because if you are lower income and you're buying a house, you can't fix, you probably don't have the means to completely renovate the house or put in heating or a new water system or what have you. But that really limits the houses that you can get with that loan. I want to say I was approved for like $110,000, and this was back in, what was it? Was it 2014? I think. Yeah, 2014. I was approved. So I was 24. I was approved for this loan, but it was only for like 110, 120. But it was just me. I was single at the time, so I definitely was like, townhouse is a great idea. And that all kind of went up in flames, and I don't remember how much I've shared about that story, but there was some like issues at the bank and all this stuff, and essentially like, so I didn't have to pay a down payment because of this program. And then like there was some sort of screw up with the bank and the loan and the this and the that, and basically my debt to income ratio wasn't good enough, because at the time I still had some debt. I didn't have very much. I had some student loans, but they were not convinced that I could pay a mortgage and pay my debt, even though my mortgage would be less than what my rent was by several $100s. But don't get me started on that. And I'd never missed rent ever in my life. But then the bank was like, oh, you have to pay a down payment, and it was like thousands and thousands of dollars. And I remember telling the lady, I was like, one, I'm low income, like enough to be approved for this loan. Second of all, you're my bank. You see how much money is in my account. I don't know where they thought all this money was going to come from. And of course, it's the classic, like, ask your parents. I'm sure you have a family member. And I was like, that's besides the point. Like, anyway, so that's like a little bit of a tangent. But we're in a housing crisis because, I mean, there's how we got in this mess. I can't even start to unravel. But the interest rates on housing and loans is astronomical. The price of homes is unacceptable. And there also is technically like a housing shortage. That's what they say. And right now there are more sellers than there are buyers. Now, something that I would like to point out is that there has been a lot of layoffs recently with the federal government and with different pretty large corporations. So I know that we don't always make the best financial decisions, but if you just lost your job, or your spouse just lost their job, or you think your job is in jeopardy, why would you go buy a house? So when you have people that are afraid because they lost their job, or they're afraid they're going to lose their job, that's not really like prompting people to like, you know what, we both lost our jobs, let's go buy a house. First of all, you wouldn't be approved. Second of all, like, I'm pretty sure that you're like, okay, we just need to hold on to what we've got, like our apartment or the smaller house that we already have or what have you. Because you don't want to have to like file like, have your home taken away from you because you can't make the payments. So we are in a housing crisis. And I guess the only kind of like potential benefits, if it is declared a housing emergency, is I read something about underwriting like regulations could be switched out so that it's better for the person buying the house. Also, the potential of freeing up some federal lands, which I don't really know how I feel about that. But I mean, people have to live someplace. And changing the interest rates and the housing prices. And what was the other one? Oh, that lumber and like building material might get a break from the tariffs. Those are all things that are very possible. And, everything has its pros and cons. But again, in my opinion, we are in a housing crisis, and we have been. Everybody that wants to buy a home should have the ability to do so, and should not be so limited I really think that we need to have more affordable housing. Primarily where I live, I know Brandon and I have discussed this at length, the houses are way too big. Like, I get that a lot of people, like, their American dream is like a 5-bedroom, 3-bathroom house, like with a 3-car garage, you know, and I'm just saying that from like people that I know and I've talked to. But for Brandon and I, we would love like a small 2-bedroom house with 1 bathroom. You know what I mean? Like, doesn't have to have a garage. We want something very small. One, it fits our like lifestyle. It's a lot more financially feasible because you don't want to be holding on to that loan forever. And I'm going to do another video about loans and houses and investments and all that kind of thing. But just like cost wise, the smaller your house is, clearly the better it would be. So you'd have a smaller mortgage that you could potentially pay off significantly faster than a large one. You would be saving on heating, cooling, all those kinds of things. And really, most people just don't need a huge house. A real flex, guys, is a fully funded emergency fund. A real flex is being able to work part-time and spend more time with your kids. We have to get out of this mindset that the bigger is better. And again, everybody has to make their own decisions, but you know, those are just some kind of things that I'm thinking about. But I don't know what you guys think about this, but as of the recording of this, it has not been declared. And I'm not sure that it will be because of other stuff that's going on, but we'll have to see. Okay, guys, so thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing to my channel, and until next time, bye.